Netflix came out with a series called Painkillers. It shows how the pharmaceutical companies influenced a lot of doctors to write opiates. I'm a real-life version of one of those doctors. I lost my practice. I lost my money. I lost my family. I did not let these series of events define who I am. And I've found a formula, and that formula I call ACCEPT, ACCEPT. Today, I have my home back, my family's back.
Welcome to another exciting episode of the podcast, The Thought Leader Revolution. I'm your host, Nikki Ballou. And boy, do we have an exciting guest lined up for you today. His personal story of triumph over adversity is going to touch your soul. I am speaking, of course, of none other than the one, the only, Dr. William Belfar. Welcome to the show, William.
Great to be here, Nikki. Wonderful. And this gives me the opportunity to share with you and your audience how to turn a mess into success.
I love it. I love it. So, William, the men and women who listen to this show are, with the exception of the great people that fight, bleed, and die for us to be free, society's greatest heroes. They're the entrepreneurs that have a dream and the courage to go and pursue that dream, and through that, make the world a better place. They listen to this show, not because of me, because I'm here every week. They listen to this show because of you. They want to get to know you. They want to know what your special brand of genius is and how they can learn from you and apply it in their own lives. But before they can do that, they got to get to know you. How'd you get to be the great William Belfar?
Okay. So Netflix recently came out with a series called Painkillers, which starring Matthew Broderick. And in that series, it shows how the pharmaceutical companies influenced a lot of doctors to write opiates for patients. Many of those doctors got in trouble. In fact, some lost their license and some got arrested. I'm a real-life version of one of those doctors. 10 years ago, I was arrested by the FBI for writing prescriptions of oxycodone. At first, I thought I was doing the patients a lot of good and treating their pain. But then I realized that I was only contributing to their addictions. And I tried to stop. I tried to get away from it. I even changed states. I even moved. But my problems just followed me. So 2 years after I moved, while feeling pressured, I wrote a prescription for oxycodone to somebody I had written prescriptions for in Massachusetts who showed up at my office. Soon after I did that, I was arrested by the FBI. And the day I was arrested, I thought was the worst day of my life, but things only got worse. You see, I was a neurologist and a psychiatrist trained at both NYU and the Johns Hopkins Medical Center. I had a thriving practice, neurology and psychiatry practice on Park Avenue in Manhattan. And after I was arrested, I lost everything. I lost my practice. I lost my patients. I lost my livelihood. I lost my money. I lost my family. I lost my home. I became homeless. I even had to give away my dogs just for their safety because it wasn't even safe to live with me where I was living. However, I did not let these series of events define who I am. Today, I am the clinical director of New Beginnings, a group of mental health clinics that's spreading throughout this country. I have my home back. I have my son back. My family's back. My dogs are back. Financially, I'm more than stable. I'm doing fine. And I've just been progressing in my life. I've been interviewed on television. I've even spoke recently at the Mexican Academy of Medicine and also the Mexican Stock Exchange. And the way I came back and what I've been through I put it all down in a book. My book has just come out on Amazon. It's called Mess to Success: How to Overcome Adversity. And I found a formula for overcoming adversity, which I'd like to share with you and your audience. And that formula I call ACCEPT, ACCEPT. So the A is admit you did something wrong. Take full responsibility for your actions and everything that you've done. Because don't blame other people. At one time, I was blaming the FBI, I was blaming my patients, I was blaming everyone except myself. Once I took full responsibility, I was able to get back on my feet. C, cut out all toxic people from your life. Anybody you're hanging around with who's doing criminal behaviors, using drugs, using alcohol, get them out of your life, cut them out of your life, and also cut out any drugs or alcohol that you're doing or any destructive behaviors you're doing, including eating bad foods or poor nutritious foods. C, contribute. Even though you did something wrong, even if you hit rock bottom, you still have your talents, your education, your values, your skills. Don't forget that you still have them all. And you can contribute to society and to others and to yourself with that. The E, exercise. In order to turn your life from mess to success, you need your body in good physical shape. You need to exercise. Do the best you can. Run, walk, go to the gym if you can. And also, again, watch what you eat. P, purpose. This is a secret. You need a purpose in life. Everybody has a purpose. Not everybody knows what their purpose is. It's the reason you get up in the morning. It's what gets you by obstacles. It's what will keep you going no matter what. And T, try and try again. Don't ever give up. I could have stopped. Other people in my situation who've done what I've done, they've given up on life. Some of them have even taken their lives. Do not give up. Just keep trying. And when I say that, look, after this happened to me, I was turned down for employment. I was turned down for jobs. I was turned down for housing. I wasn't treated well by a lot of people, but I never gave up. And because of that, I was able to turn everything around. And now that's where I am. That's why I am where I am today. And that's the formula.
That's a heck of a story, man. So let's backtrack a little bit and unpack a bit of what you said. So you're this doctor who's got a thriving practice in one of the most exclusive places in the world, New York City, Manhattan, Park Avenue. What made you believe that you needed to write these prescriptions that your training had probably told you weren't necessary to be written?
Okay, well, this is where, I'm not making excuses and I take full responsibility for what I did. But this is an incident where my personal life collided with my professional life.
Mm.
So after I finished my training, I became the director of forensic psychiatry at the Westchester County Jail. I had a very big position, like even before I graduated. And I developed a practice very quickly and it just boomed. However, even though my professional life was skyrocketing, my personal life was just in a downward spiral. I was involved in a very acrimonious divorce and custody battle, which lasted almost 10 years. And I think what really kind of did me in was when my ex-wife relocated with my son from New York to Massachusetts. Now, I ended up moving to Massachusetts, yet I was trying to run and manage a practice in New York. So it was very hard. And I was actually at one point a single parent in Massachusetts while trying to run a practice in New York. I did have coverage for me. And what happened was the CEO of a hospital I was working with decided that he wanted me in the hospital and not the people covering for me. And I told him, well, I can't come back because right now I have to watch my son. So he basically said to me, choose between the hospital and your son. So I said, well, I'm choosing my son. The next thing you know, he throws all my doctors out of the hospital and sues me for $10 million in a frivolous lawsuit. However, this kind of wiped out my practice and wiped me out overnight. I had a multi-million-dollar practice. And then there was stuff put up on the internet about me, and I became very depressed. And went and got a job at a hospital up in Massachusetts. And during that time in the hospital, and I did that to save my practice in New York, I met somebody, a nurse, who I told about my situation. And she says, well, you're a Park Avenue doctor. I could help you start a clinic up here. So, look, I wasn't thinking correctly and my judgment was kind of off, but I did. And, and she started bringing me patients, and I was, started a pain clinic. I didn't even know much about the stuff at the time, the oxycodone. And people were paying me $1,000 to come see me. And my goal at the time was to get back to New York. Now, that's kind of this is my story of why it happened with me. Other people, there's different stories. What happened was I finally was able to convince my ex-wife to let me move down to New York with my son. But by that time it was too late. And then 2 years later, the FBI came knocking at my door and arrested me. So even though, yes, it looks like I was this Park Avenue doctor, thriving practice, had all this great education, both a neurologist and psychiatrist, NYU, Boston University I was at, and the Johns Hopkins Medical Center. I'm still a human being. My personal stuff caught up with me, and everything collided. And
so William,
that's what happened with my situation. I can't talk about other doctors.
Well, William, I come from a family that's been involved in the medical business. My mother was an ER nurse for 25 years, and my dad in Iran used to equip hospitals with all their equipment. So I spent a lot of time in that world, and there seems to be a sense until very recently that doctors were almost gods in a way. They were not mere mortals, that they knew more, they were smarter, they were better, but they're just human beings. Like you said, you're just a human being. And because of that perception by a lot of people, doctors are isolated from non-doctors. And it sounds like you were isolated because you were going through a divorce. I'll tell you this, I was going through a divorce at one point in my life. And what I did is I got involved with a men's group run by a man who helped people like me who were going through relationship turmoil. And that experience of having a dozen of us talking about these issues helped me navigate through those and avoid making a lot of dumb decisions, which I otherwise would have made. You know what I mean? And I don't know what your situation was like. I don't know if you were part of anything like that, but I suspect not. And I suspect
No, I wasn't.
I suspect that if you had been part of something like that and you had men around you, one of them would have smacked you upside the head and said, hey, William, don't do that shit. You know what I mean? You're going to mess things up even worse. Be smart, right? And that to me is what's important to understand is just because someone is accomplished in one area of their life does not mean that they have that same godlike intelligence in all the other areas of their life. Just because you're a doctor of psychiatry and you're a neurologist doesn't mean you are an expert in keeping a relationship together in a tough situation. And I think that's a very humanizing thing, not just for you, but for anyone listening to this episode who maybe they're a doctor themselves, maybe they know doctors. Man, look at doctors as human beings. They're just people. They do great things and they do terrible things, just like all people.
Absolutely. And you're right. I mean, I was not a part of that group. There was a great feeling of isolation. I mean, I was, taking care of my son. I was very worried about him at the time. My main support system was my aunt, who lived to 101 years old.
Wow.
And she had died a couple of years earlier. She lived on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And you talk about somebody slapping me in the face, she would have. Even at age 100, she would have definitely slapped me in the face
Yeah.
had she, been alive. So, yeah, and I did feel isolated. That's a very good point that you're making.
Yeah. So you went through this. Walk us through what it was like, after you were arrested, after you lost all the moorings to your old identity.
Okay. So it was just a living nightmare. I can't really describe it any other way. The day I was arrested, I was, this is a story in itself, and it just went down after that. They came to my house, 7 a.m, knocked on my door. I come downstairs wearing like shorts and my t-shirt. I open the door and six or seven FBI agents come running in with, semi-automatic rifles and wearing goggles and shields and stuff. And, they kind of threw me against the wall. Say, "You, Dr. Belfar, yes, you're under arrest." Then the worst, I saw my son walking down the stairs and he started, crying. And it was, I watched, he's watching his father get arrested. And, I remember going in the car, being put